All right, let's just jump right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking what is honestly one of the most fascinating and complex pivots in the entire history of pop music. So picture it. It's 1991. Michael Jackson has just finished up the incredibly grueling, massive Bad World Tour. And sure, he's undeniably the biggest star on the planet, but behind closed doors, he's actually facing this massive existential crisis. The tabloids are completely relentless, his personal life feels fractured, and creatively, he's just stifled. He absolutely needed a radical reset.
And man, that reset gave us this exact energy. If Thriller was the invitation to the party, Dangerous was the haunting walk home at 3 a.m. I love that quote. Because we're not just talking about a standard collection of pop hits today. We're literally deconstructing a dark, paranoid, deeply psychological manifesto.
Section 1. A King in Crisis. The Reset of 1991.
So Jackson knew he had to make a clean break from his own legendary past if he was going to survive his tabloid paranoia and what he felt was a creeping creative stagnation. So for his 8th studio album, he makes a move that completely shocked the industry. He fired Quincy Jones. Right, the legendary producer behind Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. But Jackson felt that Quincy's whole orchestral, polished, pristine 1980s pop thing was just stuck in the past. He was craving something entirely different now. He wanted to sound street. He wanted an aggressive sound.
Section 2. Forging a Dangerous Sound. New Jack Swing.
To build this entirely new sonic architecture, Jackson linked up with Teddy Riley, who was literally the hottest producer in R&B at the time, and he fully committed. I'm talking a $4 million recording budget. $4 million! That made it the most expensive album ever made at the time. He actually built a state-of-the-art SSL console studio right inside Neverland Ranch. So just picture this. He's pouring his absolute soul out on the mic, while right outside his window, pet giraffes and elephants are wandering around like the world's most exotic A&R team.
Now, the sound they were chasing in that Neverland studio was New Jack Swing. If you're not familiar, it's basically this incredible fusion of golden age hip-hop swing mixed with R&B melodies driven by these really aggressive synth stabs and a signature swing drum pattern. Jackson leaned heavily into harsh digital synthesizers like the synclavier and layered complex hip-hop drum programming right over live drum kits. He absolutely had to have that gritty, street-level authenticity.
But forging a completely new sound like that doesn't exactly happen without some friction. While making these 14 tracks, Jackson and Riley actually got hit with a major lawsuit. Composer Al Di Meola and the SOS Band sued them, claiming the dizzying piano melody on the industrial title track Dangerous was lifted straight from their song Symphony. And Jackson ended up settling out of court for a pretty substantial sum, which is super interesting because it's a very rare admission from him that he didn't compose absolutely everything from scratch.
Section 3. Inside a Fractured Psyche. Album Themes.
Jackson actually co-wrote over 60 songs for this project, and all those dark themes from the final cut seeped right into the album cover itself. Painted by Mark Ryden, this surreal, Renaissance-inspired oil painting is just jam-packed with symbolism. I mean, look closely. You've got the Elephant Man's bones, a direct nod to his most infamous tabloid story. A button nose and dark eyes commenting on his changing physical appearance. Cartoon characters representing his lost childhood, and his circus tent, which really symbolizes how he felt like a literal sideshow act. For the very first time, Jackson's openly acknowledging and even weaponizing his freak persona.
When we look at this massive 77-minute mosaic, we can basically categorize the 14 movements of Dangerous into 4 distinct themes. It whips violently from the hardcore industrial funk of the New Jack Swing gauntlet right into these social conscious tracks. And think about the wild contrast there. On one side, you have the chaotic, harsh sense of Teddy Riley, and on the other, you have Heal the World, this incredibly schmaltzy, self-produced global anthem with a literal children's choir. It's totally jarring, but it is 100% intentional.
And smack in the middle of this musical gauntlet, he delivers some of his most aggressive lyrics ever. Why You Want to Trip on Me. He is just ruthlessly taking down the media here. He's essentially looking at the tabloids and asking, why on earth are you obsessing over gossip about me when there are ignored global tragedies like famine and war happening right outside your door? It's a furious, incredibly pointed question.
This whole album just swings wildly between emotional extremes. I mean, look at the span of these tracks. You've got the total claustrophobia of Jam, opening with Breaking Glass and featuring Heavy D and Michael Jordan. Then there's the heavy sexual tension of In the Closet with Naomi Campbell, the totally paranoid, vertigo-inducing Who Is It, complete with that surreal David Fincher video. And then, standing in absolute stark contrast to all that digital chaos, you have Gone Too Soon. Just a fragile, gorgeous acoustic piano tribute to Ryan White.
Section 4. Redefining the visual spectacle. Global premieres.
Because Jackson wasn't just changing his sound here, he was completely rewiring how the entire world consumed music visually. 500 million people. Let that sink in for a second. 500 million viewers across 27 countries watched the premiere of the black or white music video simultaneously on MTV, BET, and Fox. It was an absolutely unprecedented global event. Driven by that iconic, snarling guitar riff from Slash, the video famously gave us the morphing faces effect. And yeah, that highly controversial 4-minute Panther dance segment that Jackson later had to publicly apologize for.
But just look at the rapid escalation of his cultural dominance during this specific era. The album drops in November 1991, followed immediately by that record-breaking black or white premiere. And all this global momentum just kept building, culminating in January 1993 with a performance that literally changed how the NFL handles halftime entertainment forever.
I am talking, of course, about the Super Bowl statue pose. Jackson catapults onto the stage, right? And he stands completely motionless in front of the entire world for a full 90 seconds of dead silence before finally exploding into jam. It was just an awe-inspiring display of total control, and he just kept pushing those visual boundaries, like debuting that physics-defying updated anti-gravity lane in the Dangerous short film.
Section 5. Blueprint for 90s R&B. The Legacy.
Now, despite all this massive spectacle, the album only actually won a single Grammy, and the initial critical reception? Surprisingly mixed. Back in 1991, rock critics were honestly pretty cruel. Rolling Stone gave it just 3 out of 5 stars, calling it bloated and whining about the runtime. But jump ahead to the 2010s, and there's been this massive critical reevaluation. Pitchfork gave it a perfect 10 out of 10, crowning it the most underrated pop album of the 90s, and finally recognizing it as its true artistic peak.
And honestly, the commercial reality tells a totally different story from that early media narrative anyway. The album sold a staggering 32 million copies worldwide. That's 5 million in the US alone and 27 million internationally. It was an undeniable, absolute smash hit. Yet, at the time, the media still unfairly tried to frame it as a flop simply because it didn't match the mythical, totally unbeatable sales numbers of Thriller.
But I think the true legacy of Dangerous is the musical DNA it left behind for the next generation. This genre-fluid production directly laid the groundwork for R&B heavyweights like Usher and Timbaland. You can hear those exact same harsh digital synths in The Weeknd's music today. Kanye West famously sampled Jam, and Drake has heavily adopted the exact kind of paranoid, conversational vocal delivery that Jackson pioneered right here. This album was a messy, overlong, brilliant confession where Jackson somehow successfully married his childhood innocence with his darkest adult realities. It literally became the blueprint for modern pop.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you to take away from today's explainer. By fully embracing his own chaos, did Michael Jackson actually create his ultimate masterpiece? He aggressively dragged pop music kicking and screaming into the 90s, blending every genre imaginable. And despite all the swirling chaos surrounding him, he proved he was never more in control. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. I really hope you look at this album in a whole new light next time you press play.